Hi, in this video we'll have a look at Docker basics. As you might know, Docker is a utility that helps us resolve one of the main problem. It works on my machine problem. For example, if you want to run your web application in some other system like a dev or QA environment, it's not sufficient to pass just the deployment artifact, like for example, a WAR file. You may also want to install the same version of the software that you use to create the application, for example, Tomcat or something like that, MySQL. If there is a mistake, even on the version of the software, there are chances that the application may not run. So Docker helps us to resolve this problem by keeping the environment preparation part out of the application development by using Docker files and DockerCompose, things like that. These define the configurations of the environment, and this will be used for different environments. Okay, so what we'll look into this video. So we'll have a look at how to get started using Docker. So that is the installation of Docker, and how do you run a simple container based on an existing image. How do you create custom images, and how do you upload to a Docker hub, and how do you use the Docker files, and we'll have a look at how to use Docker Compose as well. Okay, so let's get started. um, So installing Docker, you can actually go to this docker.com. So here we have one URL where it says how to install on Docker for Mac. So this installation will help you get started on Mac. So for example, you just click on this, it will download the DMG file, you can install it. So once you are done with the installation, you can simply say docker hyphen version to see if it is installed properly or not. So now, so you can actually simply say docker images to see what are the images that are available in your local system. So what is Docker Hub? Docker Hub is a repository which holds the images that you can use to build a container. So for example, Ubuntu is one of the image in the Docker Hub, but you can see that Ubuntu is not oh, it's there, but you can actually remove this Ubuntu image as well. So now if you want to create a container based on Ubuntu, so you just have to say docker run -it. It is for interactive terminal, and -d is for daemon process, and you just simply specify the name of the name of the image. So now what happens is, like, it's not able to find Ubuntu, so it's pulling from the Docker Hub. Now you can also say docker pull Ubuntu, but even if you don't specify it, it will automatically pull this. So now you can see that the container is started. Now you can say, if you simply say docker ps, now you can see that a container has been started, which is based on Ubuntu. um, Okay, the next step we might want to do is to connect to this container and probably install Apache server on top of it. So how do you connect to a container? You can simply say docker exec -it. You have to specify the container ID, which is this, and you say bash. Okay, now we connected into this container. The next step is to you can probably install apt-get Apache 2. Okay. Okay, so we'll just say apt-get say install Apache 2. Now this will install Apache 2 in the container. Just say yes. Okay, you can simply check status to see if it is running or not. So if it is not running, to start, this should start the service Apache to start. Okay, now if you say okay, now it's running. Now you have installed Apache 2 server on top of the base image that you used. Now if you restart this container, all the changes you made is lost. So what you may want to do is you may want to create a new image on top of it. So how do you do that? So if you say docker ps, I'm still inside the container, so I just need to come out. I just say docker ps container. Now what you need to do is just need to say docker commit, and then you specify the container ID and followed by the image name. So I'll just say they begin slash sample test image. So if we now say docker images, now you should be able to see this test image. Now what we can do is, like, now we can actually create one more container based on this image. So what you should be doing now is you can say docker run -it -d. Now let's do a port mapping, like, so you just say that the Apache runs on port 80, but when I want to test this application, I just want to use port 82 instead of 80. So you just say 82:80, and then you say the image name slash sample test image. Okay, now if you say docker ps, now you can see two applications running. So now let's see. Now even though we started the container, the Apache 2 server may not be running because we just created a new container. So let's say docker exec -ti -container id and then bash. Now just say service Apache 2 status, which should not be running, service Apache 2 start. Now this should be running. Now go to say http host 82. You got it. Okay, now we have the container. Now we have the still inside the container. So you just say docker images. Now what if, like, someone else has to use this image? So obviously you need to upload it to Docker Hub. So I just say docker login. Now in this case I've already logged in. So if you're not already logged in, so it'll ask you to enter your credentials. Now once you logged in, so you just say docker push followed by the image name, image. So this is now uploading to Docker Hub. Okay, yeah, now so it should be pushed. Let's go to Docker Hub to check if it's uploaded or not. So you just say repository cloud.docker.com/repository/list. Now here you can see that you have the image in Docker Hub. Now if you log into if you're using a different system, again you need to say docker run -it followed by this image name, or you have to pull it. So first you can simply say docker pull followed by this image name. Okay, now let's do some cleanup. Say docker ps, you have the containers. So you can simply say docker rm-f followed by the container id. So if you specify this, then you'll be able to delete a container. But in this case, like we have more than one container, so you can simply say hyphen dollar docker ps hyphen a hyphen q. So this should delete both the containers. And you have docker images. You can say rmi maybe slash sample test image. Okay, so now you can see that this is no longer there. Okay, now we saw how to install Docker, how do you create a container, how do you create custom images, and how did you upload to Docker Hub. Now you can see that we have to do a lot of Docker commands in order to do that, creating images, all these things. But you can also use a configuration file called as Docker file, and this to simplify this process. So what we can do is we can actually create a Docker file to specify what is the base image and what are the scripts to be installed, and whether you want to start the service by default or not. All these things can be specified inside a Docker file. So I'll quickly create a new directory called demo, and then I'll create a simple Docker file. And here you can simply say Ubuntu. This here you're specifying the base image that needs to be used for this container, and then you can actually specify, say, the default set of commands that needs to be executed after this is started, like apt-get update, and just say apt-get update. And okay, now entry point Apache ctl-d for round. So this is like, once the softwares are this is apt-get -y, you have to install the Apache server. Okay, now after this is installed, then it'll run this. Now let's also create one sample HTML file that needs to be used to simply test it. So let me create one file called test.html, and so let's say I'll say h2, simply say it works. Okay, now in this case you may want to move this file to the Apache the location. So you just say add whatever is there in the current directory, which is like all the files under demo directory, should be moved to var/www/html. Now that's it. I've created the Docker file. Now the next step is to run this process. So I just need to say docker build dot. No, first we may need to go to that directory. So I created this Docker file in this directory, so you can see these things. So now I just say docker build dot -t followed by, you can simply say sample docker file image, and now it's going to create that image. It doesn't take much time. Okay, now the image is created. Now I can quickly verify the images. So you can see that this file is created. Now let's create a new container out of this image. So I just say docker run -it-d, and then we'll do the port mapping as we did before. I'll just say 82:80, and you simply say debian slash sample docker file image. That's it. Okay, now we can quickly verify this by running. So I can simply say http localhost colon 82 slash test.html. Okay, fine, we got it. Okay, now we'll quickly go to this Docker Compose. Now in this case, we just know that we created a simple container with just Apache server, but most of the time in a microservice environment, you may want to run multiple containers. Like for example, one web application a container and a MySQL container and things like that. So in this case, it might be tedious to run these Docker commands manually. So the solution for this is you can use Docker Compose, where you will have one configuration file, which will be used to define container configurations, for multiple containers. So will not create a Docker Compose file from scratch. Instead, we'll use one that is already there in the docs. So go here, just pick this configuration. Now let's go back to here, and so now this is a YML file. Okay, now we created it. Now we just go back to this and say Docker. Okay, now we may have to go to this directory, cd demo compose. So you just say Docker compose -d. Then what this will do is, like, it'll do a lot of things. Like for example, let's go to this configuration file. So in this case, you can see that this YML file contains two deployments, two containers. One is a database which is based out of image MySQL, and it uses a volume. This is nothing but a volume mount, where if you restart the container, then whatever content you stored in the local will get lost. So you may want to define a volume for that. So you can actually specify the environmental variables, and this is one deployment. The other deployment is WordPress, and it depends on an image called WordPress, and the ports that is mapped is, like, 80 is mapped to 8000, and you have other things. So once the application is started, you can see that this WordPress depends on the DB. So once this Docker Compose is up and started, now you should be able to run this application WordPress on port 8000. Now let's quickly go through this. It's already started. Now go to port and just say localhost 8000. Now you can see that it is already started. Now if you go through this, right, if you do this complete setup completion, it'll also prove that it is connecting to MySQL, but that's not the, yeah. So yeah, this proves that Docker Compose will is working. Okay, that's it. Let's quickly recap on this. So this one, we saw how to install Docker. Basically, we just need to go through the documentation to see if it is Mac, then you install Docker in a different way. And second thing is, how do you run a container based on some images like Ubuntu? How do you create custom containers? How do you upload to Docker hubs? And how do you use Docker files? And how do you use Docker Compose? Okay, thanks a lot for your time. See you in the next video.